So welcome everybody to Knox Makers Tuesday night virtual show and share. We've been doing this for a while, so it's good to see a lot of you back with us tonight. We have a full slate of presenters who will be showing off some of their makes, their fails, their in progresses, and we're really excited to see them. So with that, let us kick off tonight's presentation with Isaac, who will be talking about Pee-wee's playback.
Hello, friends. I have a few slides, if you wouldn't mind advancing. Tracy and I were talking recently about toys from childhood, and specifically talking toys. Some of you, I think, are old enough to remember the days when a talking toy had a pull string on the back that would make it say a thing, or maybe multiple things if you're lucky and it was a fancy toy. And it reminded me of a toy that I have, which is a talking Pee Wee Herman doll. And I don't care what you haters have to say, Pee Wee Herman is a glorious gift to this world. He is an avatar of whimsy and creativity, and I love him, so keep it to yourself. As you might guess, though, a nice talking Pee Wee Herman doll from about 30 years ago is not cheap, so I don't have a nice one. I've got a busted one. But after talking with Tracy about the old talking toys, it made me feel sad that my Pee Wee had no voice. And so I thought I would see if I could make him talk again. If you would advance the slide, please. I started operating on Pee Wee to get to his mechanical innards. And so here you see I've opened up his back to expose some hard plastic. And that weird fleshy color business inside, I knew already that was going to be the talkie box. I don't know why, but those old school talkie boxes were always that weird flesh color. So took out some more screws, and if you'd advance the slide, please. That is pretty much what the old school talkie boxes always looked like. Underneath that strange grill or grating is a somewhat flexible plastic speaker cone. But of course there's no electricity in there. Instead, the speaker cone has a rigid center and kind of a nubbin on the back of it, so it can be pushed forward and then returned to its original shape. And if that happens rapidly, then obviously it can reproduce sound. Yeah, sure, advance the slide. So underneath that, this is the first layer of the mechanism. And what I sort of circled there in green, that's the equivalent of a tone arm on a record player. You can't see it, but underneath the middle bit of it is a tiny little needle, literally a needle. I mean, there's no electrical characteristic to it. And it's got that little spring business there that Sean is sort of indicating, which tends to move it to its default position when it's done talking. The red thing, it took me a little bit to figure out what that even is. But it is an adjustable tension bar that interrupts part of the mechanism you'll see in a minute, and it's adjustable. So that the bit of the spring at the bottom has got several positions it can be in. So presumably someone at the factory actually, adjusted each talking box, I guess. And I found this one needed a little adjusting to do its job the best. Next slide, please. So underneath that is the record itself, which is that sort of milky white disc there, obviously. And it's just like an old school record, right? It's a cheap injection molded plastic one, but it's got the sound files, encoded in just the same way. And that strange red spiral that I drew on there is to show you the pull string. So it winds around a little spindle there, and then eventually comes out of Pee Wee's back so that you can pull the pull string to wind the mechanism up. And what I circled in green, you can't see it, and I didn't make an effort to get a photo for you. Sorry about that, but it's a little spring steel coil there. And so when you pull the string, you're tightening that spring steel coil. And if you'll advance the slide once more, please. And that, apparently I felt the need to circle the record again. I remember when I was a child, I had a toy that I got from the Johnson Smith Novelty Company, and it was called a Bag of Laughs, I think. I had a little drawstring, and it did take a battery. It was motorized, but otherwise it was the same as this. You pushed a button and it would play a recording of this raucous laughter. I don't know why I felt like I needed that, but I did, and so I had it. But of course it didn't last very long before I took it apart, as I did all mechanical things, and discovered to my delight that the record in that one snapped on, and if you flipped it over, it was reversible, and it had something on the back, and I couldn't believe my luck. And it turned out to be bird calls, which I thought was really lame. But it did have a second bonus recording, so I guess they sold it 2 ways. So anyway, that's the record for Pee Wee there that I've circled there. Next slide, please. So this is the funny part. This is why my Pee Wee didn't talk correctly. And I guess I didn't describe what was wrong. You see, the Pee Wee doll that I had made this shrill, inhuman shrieking sound. And no, not like Pee Wee did anyway. I mean like something really terrifying, like as if he was demon-possessed or something. Like you would never get to a child that you liked even a little bit. And so the thing that's circled in this image in red turned out to be a governor. Its job was to keep the record from spinning too quickly under the spring steel action. And what was happening was that the governor was not doing its job, leaving Pee Wee entirely ungoverned. And so his record would spin very fast indeed and basically scream horribly. And the reason why that happened, if you go to the next slide, you can see apparently over the intervening 30 years, it picked up fluff from inside Pee Wee's guts. And the fluff wrapped around that little spindle right where the elastic band made contact with it. And so it was breaking the friction contact. And so it was not actually doing what it was supposed to do. When the governor is used correctly, though, when it's actually being moved by that elastic band, those metal pieces you can sort of see there, they're weights, and the centrifugal force forces them outwards. And that little fluffy business on the outside edge makes contact with the plastic chassis and introduces drag. And amazingly, that's enough to make it play back at roughly the right speed, roughly consistently. So once I got it disassembled, all I needed to do was pick all that fluff off of the governor and then reassemble it. And then it played in a way that was recognizable, but still too fast. And so I had to adjust that little spring that I pointed out earlier to change the tension on the elastic band that connected back to the governor. And once I did that, then Pee Wee played about as well as a cheap plastic toy from 30 years ago could be hoped for. And Pee Wee will attempt to speak for you now. I don't know if we'll have any luck, but here's my Pee Wee, and let's see what Pee Wee feels. Well, there you go. It's Pee Wee. That makes me happy. Pee Wee has his voice again.
The record to see if anything was on the other side.
This one was not reversible. I was totally expecting and hoping for that, but Pee Wee is not reversible. There's only the one side and only the recordings it came with, unfortunately. So that's all I've got.
So what is the mechanism that makes it play different tracks? Does it just go along the record and then when it reaches the edge, does it snap back?
I believe that at the edge, there are several tracks in, and each one leads to a different recording. I think the recordings are interleaved, if that makes sense. So depending on when you pull it, where the little needle is on the outside perimeter, it'll catch the first one and play that recording, I think. That's what it looked like to me.
There are different string configurations for if you wanted to laugh every time, or
yeah, maybe you could try and game the system. I don't know. I didn't make any attempt. I want Pee Wee to speak his mind.
You took him from Nightmare Pee Wee to fairly regular Pee Wee, as normal.
Fairly regular. Yeah.
Wayne White would be proud. We'll say that. All right. Thank you very much, Isaac. And coming up next, a lot of interesting names for our presentations tonight. We have David showing off Hammer Hammer Pony. MC Hammer, Genuine collaborating, if anybody knows that. All right, David, take it away.
All right. Well, the last few weeks I had a need for a mallet. We just, for some reason, we had no chisels here. Not that we didn't own any chisels amongst the group, but nobody had a chisel here at the shop. And so I finally got somebody to bring a few chisels, and he brought like 40 of them, and all of them dull. So I sharpened one and didn't care about the other 39, but then couldn't find a wooden mallet to beat it with. And so I decided I needed to build one. This was not my first picture intended to be, so I don't know what kind of order they might actually be in, but that's close to the finished product there. And it is, yeah, there's an early picture. This was something that typical of what I do is just find scrap wood in the wood pile and put it together. And I'd been thinking about doing a mallet for a few days and watched a lot of YouTube videos, which is what I spend most of my time not doing is the YouTube. And saw a lot of designs, you know, I wanted to do it a certain way, but then as I got into it, that was a little more complicated. And so I decided to simplify, like my projects end up usually being. But this is walnut on the outsides. The two outside pieces are walnut. Inside is cherry. And then the handle is oak. So I don't have a lot of build process videos here, but this is all just glued up. My initial plan was to make the handle slot in, friction fit, and then you could replace the handle as needed. But then on a wooden mallet, how hard are you going to be beating it to break an oak handle anyway? So I don't think that's a big deal. I'm not going to replace the handle, certainly not now that it's all glued in there. And then the walnut pieces that are the wedges in there to hold the handle in place, it's decorative because it's all glued in place. All right, next picture. Let's see what we got. Yes, on this one, this is interesting. The knot there, I filled it with super glue. I've seen that trick done. There were a couple cracks in it. Filled that with super glue, and it all actually seemed to work out very well. And not that I had any real problems later, but in the whole process of sanding it down and getting it to a finished size, I sanded off most of my super glue. But then it didn't really matter that much because at that point the knot was small enough that the hole that was really left behind isn't going to be a big deal. And it's a hammer. That was one of the things I kept trying to remind myself. Yes, you're trying to make it look nice to start with, but it's never going to ultimately look nice. And so that's okay. So next picture. Oh yeah, here's what was supposed to be my first picture. I have the two hammers that I'm showing off tonight and our 3-inch bandsaw blade right there behind it. So I'm just trying to make y'all jealous of our big bandsaw. I used the bandsaw on the mallet there, and then go on to the next slide. So I just had to put the bandsaw in there. Yeah, here's the two hammers. So there's the big mallet, and then I also made a smaller mallet, and I don't think I have a lot of individual pictures of that one, but it is, and I actually have it right here. It's a leather. I made it. My daughter's doing a leather working project, so I wanted something smaller instead of the giant mallet. Just do the small mallet here. And again, scrap wood. This is oak. I think it was a handrail for something, and it was in our scrap wood pile, so I cut it up. This has actually been jointed and two pieces of oak glued together, and then I turned it on the lathe and then turned the handle also, and then just Forstner bit into there, glued in the handle. So again, probably not going to break a handle, but if I do, it's easy enough to rebuild. As far as the seam being, you probably can't see it, but there's a seam. Yeah, there you go. There's a seam through there. It's pieced together. Again, it may not last forever, but it's intended to hit small chisels and work with leather. So it's not a hard-working hammer. All right, next picture. And then my other project, and there's the leather working hammer, and I've got a stitching pony, which is you just use it for when you're hand stitching leather. And this is my first real leather project that I'm working on with my daughter, and then I needed a stitching pony, so I made this. You can go to the next slide. It's got feet on it, or it's a single board there that you can clamp to the table, and so it stays in place. There's, from what I understand, there's two tools like this. One's the stitching pony and the other one's the stitching horse. The horse you sit on and stitch. So you have your piece right there in front of you. And then the pony is smaller and you can attach it to whatever object you need to attach it to. The wheel on there is to tighten down your arm against the leather. And that is just 3D printed with a captured nut inside the printed piece. You can go to the next slide. And I put a spring in there. This was just off of an RC car that I had tore apart a couple years ago. I stuck the spring in there so that when you loosen the big knob, it helps open the jaws and then you can tighten it. And then while I have the shaft there, and that's just a threaded rod, in that spot, I also have a hole further down. When I was looking at YouTube videos of these, I saw people put 2 and 3 holes there so you can get bigger pieces of leather inside of it. I just have 2 of them right now. If I need more, I'll do that. And next slide, if there is one. Yeah, and so there it's holding a piece of leather that I was stitching. And that's the purpose of it, is so that you can hold it in place instead of being floppy while you're trying to stick your needles in. And I think that might be it on the pictures, yeah. And so I've got the stitching pony here, and it just has a nice little knob. This is a knob that I had designed in, I think, Tinkercad or FreeCAD, and I designed it for a bigger nut on another project. And when I was deciding to do this, it's like, oh, just fill in the hole where the nut was and hollow out another hole for the smaller nut and capture it in there. So the 3D print builds part way up, pauses, you stick the nut down inside the hole, and then you continue the print on top of it. So while it is plastic, it's actually the nut is what is running on the threaded rod. So those were just 3 quick projects I've done over the last probably 3-4 weeks. And the big mallet, it has been used, and it's got glue all over it, and it's fine. It's supposed to be used. So I made it with some nice wood, but scrap wood, and it'll get used and beat up and have to be rebuilt, and that's okay.
I really like the tradition of like woodworkers and leatherworkers building their own tools, especially that hammer. It always looks really, really nice.
Yeah, you make
is there
it
a
look
method
nice.
to your madness of picking those woods for that hammer?
Yes, the method was I had a big piece of cherry in the scrap pile, and so that I made it the thick middle, and then I had some walnut. That my method was just because it was what I had. Cherry is probably not the best for this because it is a softer wood, but I didn't have a piece. I really wanted to put oak in there, oak and then walnut, but I didn't have a thick enough piece of oak to start with that was chunky enough. And so that was my method, was just because it was what was over there and I didn't have to pay for it.
David, did you rough it up with the bandsaw first to kind of get the shape and then sanded it down?
I actually, not the bandsaw on that. I did like the taper on the sides. I did that on our miter saw. The bandsaw, I did cut. No, I didn't even cut that because these 2 pieces of walnut, they were actually on a board like this, and I cut them, and then they became the faces. I did probably use the bandsaw on it some, but I don't remember. I know on the handle, I used our small bandsaw for it to get my shape. So this one didn't get turned on the lathe while the small one did.
Very good.
Are you going to donate a bandsaw at any point?
We sold a bandsaw last week at our garage sale, except it was
Not a 3-inch one though.
no, not a 3-inch one. We for some reason had 4 bandsaws here, and so we sold one of them. And I say here, I'm actually at the shop tonight.
Always really like that layered wood effect. So very impressive. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up next, Susanna's going to show off a purple pullover. Alliteration.
Hello. So, like, yeah, that my sweater that I have on, that's what I've finished here recently. For me, most of this summer has been like, well, I am sitting here and I got all this yarn, and it's kind of like a sweater, some assembly required, and I've just been trying to get through a lot of the extra and leftover yarn that I've had, and this is one of the things that I started. I think I started that like over a year ago, and I found it and just kind of worked through finishing it up. It's just a real simple, straightforward design. But what's neat about it is when you do just a really simple, straightforward design, you can put the shaping into it so that it fits just you, just right. If you go to the next slide, if you look right in the middle of that, you'll see where, you can see where the stitches kind of expand, and then a little bit above they contract again. And that's how you can control the shape of any knitted sort of thing so that it can fit or expand and contract exactly the way you want. And when it comes to something that you're going to wear, that's really nice because you can make it just exactly right for you, which mostly worked on this sweater, except for that I think that I may end up going back and redoing this collar. If you go back to the last slide, if you look at the collar right there, if you can get a little bit closer, what's challenging about adding the collar in when you're finishing up with any sort of sweater project is that you want to space out your stitches so that you don't have any gaps. But at the same time, if you end up having a few too many, then your collar doesn't snap tightly the way you might like. And I think that that's what I'll go back and do and see if I can take some out, because while this is an okay collar, it's not just doesn't quite have the snap that I want. So that's a potential redo. But another thing that's nice about knitting is you can take something like this and you can, wear it for a season and then take it apart and make it into something else if you want to. So that's what I've been doing here recently. Nothing, too out of the ordinary. That's all.
Seems like we have a chorus of people who love the color.
I see that.
Tracy asked, did you spin it too?
I did not spin that, but I have several other sweaters in the works that, were even more assembly required, which I have been spinning the yarn for. I've done a lot more spinning this summer than I have done knitting, and I have a giant stack of sweaters now that just need to be knitted together, and then then they'll be done too, and then they can sit in my in my dresser because I probably won't put them on because I don't go anywhere anymore.
All right, well, thank you very much.
That's it. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, well, next up we have Charlie, who's showing off Deadlands maps.
There we go. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I haven't made anything physically in a while, but I've run my first RPG campaign, and it's been a little bit of a tricky time to do it since everything has to be remotely. And I came up with a few ideas. This is actually set in alternate history. It's a setting called the Deadlands. It's kind of like cowboys versus zombies versus like maybe some Cthulhu thrown in there, some Lovecraftian mythos. So it's an interesting setting, but one of the tricks is, you know, you end up using towns that exist in real life. So this is actually a map that I created recently off of the first map that I gave my players, because this one's a little bit prettier. But it's more of a general area kind of idea. It's set in Hutchinson, Kansas. But the first program I used was called Incarnate. And it's pretty neat, but it's mostly good for general area maps. Let's see. Can we go to the next slide? Takes me a minute to actually see what. There we go. Cool. Okay, this is a less pretty version. I kind of had to cobble this together with about 4 or 5 different programs. It started out in Incarnate, but they hide most of the things you want to make a more viable, detailed map behind a paywall, and I'm not, you know, I wasn't really planning on doing that for my first go around. So I used a different program, kind of created the city layout, and then just kind of like just tossed it on there and kind of made it work. But there's a general layout of 1877 Hutchinson, Kansas, at least as far as I could tell. It was a little bit tough to find photos and maps from that time period. 1888 was about the best I could find, and it was way more developed than I wanted to, so I kind of had to fudge it a little bit. But it's generally correct. And I went in and kind of followed the path of the Arkansas River and the island and everything like that, and created it through that program. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, and there's railroad lines on there too. Okay, this is the next program I used called Dungeon Painter Online at pyromancers.com. And that's actually a lot better for a battle map, this program, because there's a lot of customizability and a lot of grid pattern and stuff like that already added into it. Actually, this floor is built it, and we'll show you that in just a second. So that's great, but the program you can't actually use in real time. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll show you the next part. This is a dungeon that I created on a program called Schmeppy. And it bills itself as your digital whiteboard or online whiteboard. It's really great because you can create these maps and invite someone to your game, and you can all just log into the same hosted map on their servers and access it in real time. So your players will have different authorizations than you will, and you can hide certain things from them with it's called Fog of War. But you can put tokens on it and they can move those themselves. So that's really like the big thing. And I think, is that the last slide?
Yeah.
Okay, and can you do the presentation thing? Yeah, perfect. And I think someone just asked a question, but I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, John Dale, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry. So you said this was for RPG games, and you're like doing them online?
Yeah,
Everybody's
exactly.
sharing the same map. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're just using a Discord server for video, so we can talk to each other at the same time. Okay, and I will show you these programs real quick. They're not programs, they're free pages, which is the best part. Okay, loading up here. Okay, perfect. So this is Incarnate. It's got a lot of stamps, which is what I use to create like the mine and the town and that kind of thing. And you can make it look pretty good. It's got a pretty decent amount of customizability, and like it automatically adds the shadow to the edges, like when you cut out part of the sections where the water is and all that kind of thing. But of course, you can't use this for live gaming, and it's not super detailed, so it's really more of a general area thing. Then on to, this is Pyromancer's Dungeon Painter Online. This is a great way to build the maps, but again, you can't access it in real time with your players. And I created the second level here. I actually have to add on to this because my players decided to use a special mechanic in the game where they get to mess with your maps and use like a special fate point to create something if they're willing to do it. So I have to build a backstage to the theater now. And it's as easy as that. You just choose like ground, floor, roof, and you click and drag, and it will paint whatever you need it to. It's got a little bit of limited options as far as the objects go, but that's because I'm, again, not paying for this one. This is the free version. If you're willing to kick in on it, then there's a lot more customizability. But it is a super useful program. And it's got a ton, like actually, if you look over here on the right side of the page, everything is done by layers, and you can also make groups. I'm sure that would have made things a little bit cleaner, but I also wanted the ability to kind of go through and grab whatever I wanted to pull out easily and just delete it or modify it that way. So that's a good place to create your maps, but it's not a great place for using them. This is Schmeppy. I still love the name. It's not as good as the next thing I'll show you because you have to create all your maps in this program and use them locally. It's still nice because it's free and it has tokens. Like you just go to token, choose your color, and drop one right there. And it also shows measurements. So if your character can only go, 8 squares, that's exactly as far as it can go. And it's got a fog of war option also. So if I did this, it would hide that entire center section from the players. So the players would see that until I was ready to show it to them. But my favorite program out of all of them that I've used lately is called Owlbear Rodeo, which is a wonderful name in my opinion. And it's awesome because you can't really do a lot of creation in the program, but it's super easy to pull in maps from other places and use their overlay with all their tokens and all their functionality. Like this is a map I just pulled off of Dyson Logos. They have some pretty cool ones. But all you have to do if you want to hide something is go to the Fog of War tool and click. Oh, nope, I'm on the wrong one. I need the roller. And all that, when I let go of it, will be hidden from the players. It isn't hidden from us because we're in the GM screen section. But like this screen over here on or this grayed out section is hidden from the players because that's a secret basement they haven't found yet. But it's super easy to pull in all your maps from other places. Like I have my maps from Schmeppy saved in here, and I have the maps from Pyromancer. Yeah, you can see that there. I haven't updated this one. I need to get the second level put in. But you just grab your token, drop it, and you can move it around within that area. And it also has some similar effects. It's got a countdown timer that's actually recently added. I'm going to definitely use that the next time there's a bomb or something. That'll be fun. And another fun option is it has a dice tray that you can pull in and has automatic rolling for you if you want to do it that way. But one of my favorite features also is it has a soundtrack. So you can connect this and your game session that your players are watching, because this is one that your players can be invited to, and they can move their own tokens and interact with the page. But the soundtrack, you can connect to a Spotify page, and it will play like your creepy Western theme music while you're running your game. And the last page I had to show is one I just found out about. And I haven't had a whole lot of time to play with it, but if anybody needs to create a dungeon, it's super straightforward and easy. It's called Dungeon Scrawl, like Dungeon Crawl, but with an S. And it's very straightforward. It's pretty modifiable. Like you can change the color, change the background, change the hashings on there and everything like that. It's just like a drag and draw kind of thing for maps. And it's even got a lot more customizability than this, but that one is another one that's totally free and would be another really cool resource if anybody needs to create a map for any games. And I think, yeah, I think that is about it. But it's taken a surprising amount of my time, which is fun because I love the setting and I love the like Lovecraftian stuff that I've pulled into it.
Really cool. That's something I've always wanted to try, and it's cool to know that there are digital options out there.
Yeah, there's a ton out there. These are just the best ones that I came across.
Very cool. All right, thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Rob is going to show off ESPN 32, which is the most obscure channel of ESPN available.
Yes, not the Ocho with the dodgeball, right? It's much further down the dial. Yeah. It's much further down the dial. So, yeah, that was a John Dale. The N was special treat from John Dale, I think. So if you go to the first slide. So I'm always playing and always looking at different microcontrollers and, just to see what's out there and what's the gadget du jour. And I came across this. This is the ESP32 is a couple of generations after our original 8266, I think it was called, which is a Arduino compatible Wi-Fi little microcontroller. And the trick on this one is that dash CAM, that's for camera. And so that's what I'm showing here, is that's actually the back side of the microcontroller. My fingers are holding the side that has the microcontroller. But what you're looking at there is a little camera. And the camera, when you order this, it's a $9 board that comes with the camera. So it's basically an Arduino with a built-in camera. So if you can go to the next slide. There's the other side, and you can see the little Wi-Fi antenna. So this is Wi-Fi capable. You can put an external Wi-Fi antenna. There's a little teeny connector there for it. And I'm also showing on the lower part of the screen there is the RS-232 input, the USB input. The downside of this ESP is it has no Wi-Fi, or I'm sorry, USB direct connect. So to power it, you actually have to kind of plug it into an external RS-232 USB device to get it to power up. That's okay, because you only need to do that to get it programmed and operational, and then I can disconnect that, and it'll run Wi-Fi and then connect to my network and go on from there. So I only need to hook up, say, a battery to it or a little 5-volt supply. So if you go to the next page, see what this was. So in the Arduino environment, when you load the software for Arduino, the ESP32 package is what you put in there, and when you load that, it allows you to compile and then speak to this device. So that's all I was showing here. That's the actual, right from the manufacturer. If you look all the way to the left there, it's a manufacturer name. So it's not a third party. It's actually from the manufacturer. So if you go to the next page, what I got here. And this is showing, okay, once I've connected that library, I'm in the Arduino environment. You can see I start in the examples, and then I go down to the ESP32, and then there gives me the option for a camera, and then I have a camera web server. So right off the bat, I bought this and loaded the library for it. I was able to get an example program operational with the camera, which worked out nice. Sorry, Sean. Oh, there he is. He's back. Next page. This is the example program. Couple things had to be set up. This is an AI Thinker module, so I had to uncomment that part, put in my Wi-Fi SSID and password so it would connect, and then I had to hit the compile button. So if you go to the next one. I took this picture to remind me to say, to actually do the programming on this device, you have to jumper those two pins. So that little green jumper that's right kind of in the bottom part of the screen there, you have to put that on when you're going to program this. Then you take it back off again when you want it to run. So for programming, you put the jumper on. To get it to run, you pull the jumper back off. So next slide is me compiling it, telling me, okay, it compiled, it pushed the data down to the chip. And then if you go to the next one, you can see I pulled the green jumper off, hit the reset, and this is showing up on the little debugging screen, and it says, hey, the camera's ready, and it's become a web server on my network at IP address 32. And so it's telling me to connect a web browser to that IP address. So if you go to the next slide, and what you get is it's a web server. And so there's the camera on the little ESP32 camera, and the example program gives you all of these options to play with adjusting the camera. So I can adjust the quality, the resolution, and things like that. So right off the bat, the example code gives you like a Ring doorbell for $9 with the Wi-Fi capability. And from a browser, if I was to sort of put a battery and tape it to my wall outside, I'd have a little Ring doorbell for $9. So if you go to the next page, you can see that I bumped the resolution way up on the camera. Actually, this was really hard to capture a screenshot of video that wasn't blurry because the resolution was so high. So that's why it's a little bit blurry. And if you go one more, this is a feature that's interesting. If you look at the bottom, it has face detection and face recognition. Again, built into the example program. So back to that little Ring doorbell, you can turn on a pin on this little controller to say, hey, I don't recognize the face at my front door. And yeah, it does look like an intruder, right to me too. But what you have to do is you have to recognize your face, and it stores it in. And again, this is just the example program. I've started playing with the camera, and I'm probably going to make a Ring doorbell out of it. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing. Only it'll be my version and not the Ring that I have to register on their website for. So I'd prefer to do it this way. I'll probably not use the internal face detection recognition because it's not very good. It's hard to get it to recognize your face and everything. I'm probably going to have it send the picture back to one of my little servers that's going to run OpenCV with full facial recognition on OpenCV capability. So you let the back-end server do all the hard work. But so that's my little playing with an ESPN32 show and share. It's a neat little device for $9. So
does it create a stream you can send somewhere?
Yes, I can send a stream. Again, if you look at the example code, you can see what it's doing is sending a standard JPEG stream of single images, and it's streaming it via HTML. It can also automatically snap an image and then save the image. Effectively, it's an Arduino program that comes with a library that you can do what you want with it. So yeah, you've got all those capabilities. Tracy, you want a link to where I bought it? Or a link to, which link? Yeah, okay. All right, should I post that on here or post it up on our site? Because I actually have, here, I'm going to post it right in our little public thing since we're sharing that.
Supposed to hear.
Yep, there you go. There's a link to, it's, I say $9. I bought 2 of them. I think you can buy them on eBay for $5 or $6. I did the Prime $18 for a pair of them. Ah, yeah, good point, David. Yeah, so they're there. That's the little 32 on Amazon that I bought. And I'm trying to think actually what I should probably do. I'll post it probably after I go offline here, but I'll post it in here also, which is the place where the library was. I'm pretty sure that was right up on Amazon. I didn't spend any time searching for the library, the Arduino library, but I'm just calling it up. Here you go. So I'm going to cut and paste that just so you can go find it. Here's the link that you put into your Arduino. So, and those 2 things, and you suddenly have this little guy up and running. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Oh, that's a final picture. That was the Amazon picture. That was actually going to be my first picture. That's the Store-bought picture, not something I took. Oh yeah, sorry, Isaac. I sent the link because I was in a hurry to grab the link in case I needed to post it. But you're right. I should have linked to the Smile one.
So, Billy, would you check my camera to make sure it's unlocked?
You must have irritated Billy.
Yeah. I'm getting a not readable error, could not start video source. So it may be from
You
my
are unlocked. I don't know.
All right, well, we can go ahead without my smiley face up there. That's just fine. So I would have loved to have gotten a picture of my repurposed clothing before I started cutting into it. But sadly, I didn't think about that until after I got going. But I did try to recreate it. So Sean, if you could go to the next slide. So no, those are not iron scorch burnout marks. That is where I was cutting out pieces to make a baseball cap. So this is a woman's pantsuit, complete with shoulder pads, by the way. So it may have been a little bit older. I was trying to find some fabric that was light blue and white striped, very fine pinstripes, and I couldn't find it in the store at the time that I was looking. But I was yard sailing and found this pantsuit and thought, oh, this would be great. I can repurpose this. I was making a pair of overalls for my grandson, and I got enough for that. But then if you zoom in a little bit, Sean, you can see that there are not just the embroidered flowers across the bottom, but upwards and scattered on the top of the blouse or jacket, whatever she wore this as well. So the iron looking cutouts are actually the cap with those flowers, a flower in the center of them. Next slide. So I really hate to have any fabric go to waste. And I had some pieces and I thought, ooh, I'm going to put back pockets on as well. I just had a little bit of a problem. I cut out, I had enough for the pocket, but I didn't see the cut on fold on the pattern. So as you can see on the top part, I didn't fold them in half. So I only had enough fabric to make half a pocket. So I decided I'd just scratch the pockets and continued on. And so could you, Sean. Next slide. So here's a little bit of a close-up of the hat for the great-granddaughter. And I would challenge you, what is wrong with this picture? Keep in mind that you are looking at the right sides of the fabric. Anybody?
You're supposed to like turn it inside out.
Yeah, one of them is, one of the flowers is right side out and one of them's wrong side. Yeah, oops. So yeah, that's one thing that sewers do, is rip and sew. And I thought I'd share that as well. Next slide. So here's the finished hat for the great-granddaughter. There are actually 3 of the flowers. I debated whether to put 3 flowered panels next to each other in the front or scatter them. I decided to scatter them. And I think she'll like that. And the next slide is what I did for the grandson. If you'll zoom in on the chest area and the patch up on the chest, he is quite the adventurer. He is all over. He never has really walked yet. He's 10 months old and he's walking now. He didn't crawl much, but he walks fearlessly all over the place. So I thought Explore is a perfect patch for him. And that's all I have. Oh, I
Did you
don't
do anything to stiffen the brim of the cap?
Yes, it is called, oh, and now it escapes me. Bunting, baby bunting. And when I first saw baby bunting, I'm like, what is that? So like everyone else, I had to Google. It looks like some really tightly woven cheesecloth or a loose burlap. It's white, but it's starched to just stiffness. And that starch does not wash out. So I did the first hats I made him. I did one with the bunting, and I did one with an interfacing that I found that was specifically for hats. And I noticed that he wears the one that has the bunting the most. And I'm wondering if the one that had the softer cardboardy type feel to it, if that one got washed too many times and is a little bit too floppy to wear.
A little lost its structure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very good.
Thank you.
We have comments about the chevron pattern on there being really cool on the hat.
Yes. Yeah, I think it came out really well.
Good. All right. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
And our final presentation of the night comes from Gabe, who is going to show off a wooden desk. So, Gabe.
Hi.
Hello.
All right. Let's go to the first slide. So I had another slide. It might show up later. It was the desk that kind of inspired me to make this one. So I got the idea of making this. Well, my dad wanted a desk, and I had been reading about George Nakashima, which is who's a famous American woodworker who was born in Seattle, and during World War II was in Japanese internment camps, where he learned how to woodwork using shrubs from the desert. Later, he moved to New Hope, Pennsylvania, and kind of like him and his family lived off of the land, dug up stones and built a house, and started his woodworking furniture business out of New Hope, Pennsylvania. And so he used to be an architect, and a lot of his work has very architectural feel to them. And so hopefully that photo shows up later and you can see the original desk. So I made this desk for my dad. Almost all of it is sweet gum, and I stained it. We can go to the next slide, please. That's what the top of the desk looks like. And so this is kind of like a weird shape. So normally the person using the desk would sit on the what's on the right side of the photo right now. For any design reasons, I guess it is sort of a design reason, but I just didn't have enough wood, so I kind of had to make it stretch. He wanted a certain length on the table and didn't specify the width, so I just kind of cut that top piece smaller and then added it to the other side to make it all work out. Next slide, please. Here's a close-up, just some contrast with the background. Next slide, please. That's another close-up of a joint that I put on the bottom. So this whole project was kind of an adventure into seeing what I can get away with. Kind of like the tabletop was too thin, and then it's just a design that I don't like copying exactly what other people have done, and I don't like doing the same thing twice. So I'm always out on a limb, and sometimes the designs don't really work like what I come up with don't really work. They're not like structurally not strong enough. I don't want to throw away a project after putting like 60 hours into it. So next slide. So this is one of the things I added on later, and I'll show you. So that's the full length of the desk. There's a drawer that goes in that space where you can see in the upper left-hand corner, and I'll show the drawer later. But that's the full desk. Next slide. So here's my dad and me, and he's yelling at me, telling me that I'm going to brick the desk that I just made for him. But you know, I built the desk. You know, who knows better than me? So I told my dad. All right, next slide, please. Here's the picture of the drawer. That I made the drawer. There's a slide on the drawer later. I'll show you later, but it's mostly maple. Here's the sweet gum coming together, the tabletop coming together before the stain. So you kind of see like what the color of sweet gum. Okay, good. Next slide, please. Thanks. So there's a close-up of how I attached the legs to the table top. It's more clear in the next picture, but you know, I kind of, you can see there's scribed lines on the left side where I made sort of a grave that's a different size than the first box. You'll see it on the next slide. So there's like these trapezoidal pieces that drop in onto bigger grave, and then it slides into the smaller grave. I don't know the technical name, like mortises, I guess is the technical name. I just say graves. I don't know why I like that. But that's how the legs attach, and you'll see on one of these slides will show you how they actually slide on. Next slide. So here you can see those trapezoid pieces. They're screwed onto the top of this leg, and then so this leg will go onto the tabletop, and you just slide it, and then they'll work. They'll get stuck. All right, next slide. I put this together. So originally I was just gonna have that board on the end and then this leg right here, but that corner, this in this photo, that upper corner over, you kind of see is like it's not very stable. Like if somebody sat on that, it would just tip over. So then I had to make another leg. Next slide. So now this is a photo with that additional leg back there. So that's kind of what I was saying. I was just seeing how I can like minimally. I mean, this table has been like really pared down, so I was trying to figure out like how little wood I can use, mainly because I didn't have enough to start off with. The next slide. So here's like the setup for the 2 sets of legs, just to show that. Next slide. And then like before the stain and finish was put on. So this is obviously just after staining and putting the finish on. Next slide, please. Yeah, and it's just a side view. You can see there's like 2 dark rectangular boxes up there. So another problem was that, sorry, I've been like really close to the camera the whole time. I just realized that. So like the tabletop was really thin, and when you put pressure on it, it would just bend. So I added 2 pieces of wood that goes all the Can't hear you, Sean.
Oh, you're dropping out. Sorry. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. My connection is not very good today. Sorry.
You were saying something about going 2 pieces of wood going down the whole length of the desk?
Yeah. So there's like 2 pieces that aren't like glued or screwed on or anything. You just slide them down the 2 dark holes you can see underneath the table that stretches all the way to the other side. And that keeps it like if someone was to sit on the table, then it wouldn't bend. It'll bend a little bit, but not that much. Next slide. Oh, and here's like the pieces for the drawer I made. I only had enough for so it was all maple, but I had one piece that was really curly, and that's the only I only had enough for the drawer front, so that was the drawer front. I think. Is there another slide?
Nope.
Oh, that's it. Cool. Thank you.
Beautiful piece. Love that joinery. All right, moving on to announcements. So, if you want to present at a future digital show and share, please either get in contact with the board member, or if you want to email into sas@knoxmakers.org. You don't even have to be a member to present via that way. If you want to just send it into that email address, if you know somebody who's making something cool, maybe you convince them to come and show off a little bit. But yeah, so that is the email address for that, for future show and shares. And also, as we teased before, Amazon, we have several ways to donate to Knox Makers and support Knox Makers. One is through Amazon Smile, like we mentioned before. Amazon Smile is literally just smile.amazon.com, and you can pick a charity to support. And we would really love it if you click Knox Makers. We're on there, and it gives a small portion of whenever you make a purchase. Small portion goes to help support Knox Makers. It's super easy to do. It doesn't cost you anything extra, so it's super easy. I do it for pretty much everything I buy on Amazon, and it gives back a little bit. You can also go to knoxmakers.org/donate and donate via the PayPal link there. That's just a couple options to help support Knox Makers, and we appreciate any help you're able to give via these ways. Like I said, these are very easy. Amazon Smile is literally just 2 clicks. It'll even remind you if you're on the regular Amazon site. It says, do you mean to go to smile.amazon.com? So in fact, it makes it harder for you to not do it once you're signed up. So those are 2 ways, and we would really appreciate it, as I said. Anyways, so now that we are at the end of our presentation for the night, we can go ahead and stop recording.